Hi everyone, I hope everyone's doing safe and being healthy and finding things to do with your time, extra time. I'll just start off with saying the country I was asked to talk about is Mozambique. I'm going to mention some quick key facts. Mozambique's about twice the size of California, and because of the current light of what's going on, I would like to just point out the zero point 0.7 hospital beds for 1,000 people, which is extremely low. Additionally, Mozambique was one of the most poorest countries in the world, and because of that, there's a lot of problems that come with the people just not having any legitimacy. So the problem that I'm going to be discussing is the debt within Mozambique. Mozambique has $12 billion in debt, and a large portion of this comes from like international organizations such as IMF or World Bank. And the problem that Mozambique faces is after they receive these loans, Mozambique, instead of taking the money and putting it towards what these loans were supposed to go towards, they just it just disperses, it disappears. And oftentimes, these loans are now restructured or refiled as restructuring, which means that Mozambique is finding a new way or rechanging the rules on how and where they're supposed to go. However, the results are never produced. And so Mozambique loses a lot of money because, first of all, they don't receive the money that they were given from the loans, and they lose a lot of trust from international organizations because they don't feel that if they provide these loans, that it's going to actually go towards the correct um, response. Um, Additionally, a lot of countries are angry at Mozambique for not properly using their loans. Russia, for example, provided some loans to help develop some maritime and seaport trade. However, Mozambique took the loans, they disappeared, were replaced under restructuring, and never were seen again. Russia is now suing Mozambique for this. Another large hurdle that Mozambique faces is natural disasters. Uh, every year, um, Mozambique almost faces a drought. This makes it really hard for the legitimacy of any agriculture means, especially with the lack of economic support and lack of money to develop any water management. Additionally, because of the extremity of the extremity of drought, uh, not a lot of root systems are developed, and so when there is a large amount of water that comes in, flooding often happens as well, because nothing to hold the substrate together. Additionally, to add on top of that, Mozambique also receives a lot of typhoons. For example, last spring, Mozambique was hit with two very, very large typhoons that destroyed a large portion of houses and any agricultural development. The problem is because of the lack of economic support from international countries, they were only given a small loan, and this loan was never actually reached the people. It was given to Mozambique government, but the money disappeared. And this just shows the problem that Mozambique faces. Even if they do have support from international organizations, it never actually goes to anything that helps develop. To add to the top of that, Mozambique faces terrorism within Islamic radicals. These radicals are located up in the north part of Mozambique, and they feel that the government is not properly managed by them, and they feel that the government should be ran under the Quran and a religious leadership. Uh, One thing that's interesting about Mozambique is Islam is not the primary religion. Catholicism is. About 28% of the population is is Catholic, and then about 13% is Islamic. This shows that it's not a very popular view. However, the idea that the government is not having any that the government's not properly running the country does hold some weight with some people, and there gives these Islamic groups some legitimacy within the country because the people agree with them. Even though they might not agree with the religious background, they do still agree with the goals that they're trying to achieve. However, there is a lot of terrorism on local tribes, which makes it kind of a tough situation for those who join and those who don't. Additionally, these organizations ruin the legitimacy of developing any um, forms of economic development because they can threaten any international parties from actually joining or working on Mozambique because they feel threatened by these radicals. So when I was talking about the developments, one thing that's particularly interesting is the large amount of natural gas within Mozambique. ExxonMobil is trying to build a system within Mozambique to develop on this. However, because of the problem of Islamic radicals and the drought and the lack of money, uh, the development's fairly slow. And with the new coronavirus, the novel coronavirus, we're seeing that they're postponing the development of ExxonMobil factories. And even to add on top of that, if it would all went smoothly, ExxonMobil was predicting that the whole project would be finished in 2030, which doesn't give Mozambique enough time to actually develop any legitimacy economically. However, they do say that once this is developed, um, Mozambique's annual GDP growth will be in the double digits, which currently it's only about 3% to about 4%. So this is going to be a huge leap once this natural gas resources is beginning to be capitalized on. Additionally, there's other aspects that the government is trying to diversify on, such as their maritime development, such with prawn and tuna production. And they have mentioned that they're going to develop in agriculture. However, there's not been a whole lot of honest attempts. Now, what can be done? There is a few problems that come with any solution that is presented, few of which is corruption. If there is any actual economic growth, how can we make sure that the government stays strong and legitimate and not attempts to, wash the money that is made? Additionally, with the lack of trust by international nations, it's hard for the government to actually receive any loans to develop any extensive or quick growth on any particular aspect, such as water management or agricultural diversification. So any solution that is developed needs to be developed almost independently from the rest of the world. The reason being is that we need to develop ourselves internally. Mozambique needs to develop itself internally, so it doesn't attempt to try to gain loans because loans haven't worked in the past, and it might even cause a greater problem by creating a deeper hole of debt. And lastly, because of the lack of money, we have to develop slowly. We can't do these extreme rehauls because we just don't have the money. Now, another large problem about that is that these natural problems, require a fast response. So it kind of creates a large dichotomy between these two problems that it's very, very difficult to find the balance and actually where to and how to manage it and work about it. But here's my solution nonetheless. I feel that I found through my research that people are fairly confident and people are fairly active and ready to go to begin the agricultural trade. They want to gain legitimacy in their life. They want to find substantial economic wealth. One thing that I thought was really interesting was in 1993, there was a ruling in the law that allows people to gain land through the government. However, a lot of people don't know this, and it's actually not enforced. So government actually doesn't allow it, even though that constitutionally it is written. So these people actually have a lot more access to land that they don't know they have. And there should be an attempt to re-educate these people and begin to follow the Constitution so that this amount of security that's in the area is not there's not a corruption and preventing people from achieving their actual law and land rights. Additionally, we need to develop some water management within the country. Because of the extreme amount of drought, the agriculture is very, very important to have water management. If we can develop this, we can create a sustainable system that can kind of compound on itself. Additionally, if we can figure out a way to develop a standard or uniqueness for each village or town, either in agriculture production or manufacturing and textiles, and maybe even to the more advanced villages and towns into like industry or electronics. By doing this, we can develop small production and factory production to help develop these small countries to kind of gain some international legitimacy and making Mozambique as a government the third party or the mediator to sell internationally and return some of that money and investment either onto the debt or onto the people to re-compound themselves and develop their economic system. Hopefully, this would develop the whole system and reduce the amount of debt. So the large portion of the solution is found in the people. Mozambique's government just needs to figure out the corruption, which is not easy by any means, but most importantly, give the people the opportunities that they need to work hard and and gain themselves some legitimacy, and which in turns will gain the government legitimacy. Thank you.